this? Well, on December 18th, 2 of the 4 world champions in the minimum weight division are going to be in action. Senicia Estrada is going to be in action.
We talked about that.
On the undercard of Zerto Ramirez versus Unification Gonzalez. Golden Boy Promotions card set to go down on DAZN. And
it's going to be a WBA title defense.
A little further south, the IBF's reigning minimum weight champion, Yokasta Valle of Costa Rica, is going to be in action in her native Costa Rica against an opponent that has yet to be announced. This is intended to be a prelude to their inexorable showdown
set to take place next year.
When I spoke to Senicia Estrada here on the channel, she informed me that in spite of some previous issues getting the unification match done, all things are ready to go for next year. And given that the WBO in the light flyweight division,
where Senicia holds the WBO title,
they very recently threatened to strip Senicia Estrada of her WBO title that she procured in her last fight. They require her to show cause for her to remain the WBO champion at that weight because she appears to be in violation of one of their bylaws. They don't allow a fighter to hold world titles at 2 separate weights,
even if it's with a different organization.
Senicia holds the WBO title at light flyweight, but downstairs at minimum weight, she's in possession of the WBA title, the one she's going to be defending in December. This creates a situation to where Senicia could lose one of her alphabet titles, and the saving grace, the silver lining, is that if the Yokasta Valle fight comes off next year, that will afford her the opportunity to pick up that title, the IBF title at minimum weight. It will afford her the opportunity to become a unified champion, placing special emphasis on this Yokasta Valle fight. Yokasta's got to make it through this upcoming title defense on the 18th against an opponent that has yet to be announced. I have no doubts it'll be a nondescript opponent, not someone that could jeopardize the unification fight set to go down next year. For Yokasta Valle, for Tina Ruprecht, for Thithi Nunez.
This is it.
Senicia Estrada's the money fight. She really is the money fight for any fighter, any champion, at minimum weight or light flyweight or even flyweight. She's the most notariable fighter anywhere at or around these weights. She has a major promoter behind her, fights on a major platform, and there's no reason that the fight shouldn't get done, not unless the Valle people get cold feet. And let's hope that they don't, because this division and others like it, they need these kinds of fights where the best fighters, the champions, do what they've got to do to separate themselves from everyone else in order to raise the division's profile and their own profiles as well. There's no shame in losing that alphabet title to Senicia Estrada. The same applies to every other champion at or around these weights. I give Senicia Estrada good odds, very good odds, to beat anybody with a belt in the minimum weight division or the light flyweight division. And there's no shame in that because she's just that good. She's just that good a fighter. And if you're not trying to fight a fighter like Senicia Estrada, what the hell are you doing?
What's the point?
The prize fighters, after all. You're not going to make the money fighting anybody else at minimum weight that you'll make with her.
I don't like Yokasta's chances against Senicia.
I think Senicia beats her. I think she beats her handily, though if she does, it's not the end of the world for Yokasta Valle. It's not the end of her career. She could always move up to light flyweight. And if that WBO title that Senicia is currently holding, if it becomes vacant sometime in the next couple of weeks,
if the WBO strips her,
if Senicia and Yokasta fight, and Yokasta loses, and the WBO strips Senicia Estrada, hey, she can move up to light flyweight. See about fighting for that WBO title, provided it's still vacant after that contest. I mean, there's a lot of ways it could break down, but ultimately, the best fighters need to fight the best fighters because it's the best way to raise the division's profile and their own profiles in victory or defeat. So I'm looking forward to that early next year. For now, Yokasta's going to be in action December 18th against an opponent that has yet to be announced.
She's going to be in action the same day as Senicia.
I think it would have been a good idea for Golden Boy Promotions to have allowed Yokasta Valle to fight on that Zerto Ramirez versus Unification Gonzalez card, just so that the fight fans would be able to get a look at both champions before they square off with each other next year, but tomato, tomato.
She'll be in action on the 18th.
He hurt his left hand after the 6th round. Do you feel you were fighting a different fighter after the 6th round?
Creo que ahorita las excusas salen sobrando. Yo peleé con un nudillo lastimado. No puse pretextos, di batalla y aquí estamos para la revancha si es que nos la da.
Seems like the excuses are plenty right now. I fought with Bruce Knuckles also, but I didn't make any excuses. You know, I fought the way I fought. He fought the way he thought. There shouldn't be any excuses. The fight was the way that it was.
That is Isaac Cruz post-fight reacting to comments from Gervonta Davis that he fought the way that he fought because he hurt his hand. And to that, Isaac says, well, he hurt his hand and it He fought the way he fought, so no excuses.
He wants a second fight.
He wants a rematch. As I watched this thing, I thought to myself that the fight is close, but because Gervonta Davis really is the house fighter, the guy that the promotional engine is behind, you can't count on
Idealism.
Isaac Cruz getting any consideration. You can't count on him getting a fair shake. I was surprised to see that the judges felt how I felt, that the fight was close. They said as much in their remarks.
Close enough that Isaac wants a rematch. Yeah, he does, but Gervonta Davis doesn't.
Does this deserve a rematch?
Hell no, but I appreciate him taking the opportunity to bring out. I thank everybody that came out tonight, everybody that watched on Showtime.
I guess that's where Gervonta Davis and his mentor Floyd Mayweather Jr., I guess that's where they differ. I guess that's where you can see that even though Floyd Mayweather Jr. promotes this guy, the two fighters, as fighters, they are cut from a different cloth. Whenever Floyd Mayweather Jr. had a close fight with a guy, he'd run it back so that he could win in more decisive fashion.
Say what you want about Floyd, but that's the truth.
Whether you like him or not, there were a lot of people that thought he lost that first Castillo fight, so he had a rematch with that guy. There were a lot of people that thought he lost that first Maidana fight, and he had a rematch with that guy. His decisive victories, the more decisive fights that he won, those fights didn't have rematches, but
Didn't need him.
the close ones did.
And Gervonta Davis isn't like that.
I can't sit here and tell you I think Isaac did enough to have won the fight. I could have seen a draw, could have seen that. But I wouldn't say Isaac won the fight. I will say that the fight was close. From where I was sitting, it seemed like a very close fight. It seemed like Isaac was making Gervonta Davis work for it more so than Leo Santa Cruz did, more so than Mario Barrios. It seemed like Gervonta Davis was uncomfortable in there with this guy. Bit of a close call, too close for comfort, so close that Gervonta Davis doesn't want to run it back.
Make of that what you will.
He was not a guy, and here he is. Congratulations on a terrific fight.
He's definitely a warrior. I think that, even though he didn't get the win, a star was born tonight.
I thought about that comment when I heard it, that Isaac Cruz made a name for himself. Going into this fight, he was a very nondescript lightweight that most fight fans, even hardcores, weren't all that familiar with, but based on this performance, it could help to launch his career. This performance, this past weekend, could be the platform that takes Isaac Cruz to new and interesting places. It all depends on the schedule they keep him on. If they shelf this guy for a year,
If people begin to forget about him.
this is the what have you done for me lately business, the what have you done for me lately sport. And if people begin to forget about Isaac and this performance, if he fades into the background, whatever buzz he amassed as a result of this fight will dissipate. You see, what happens now, what happens next for Isaac Cruz is actually more crucial and more critical than this fight was, because he went into this fight without the burden, without the pressure being on him. All the pressure was on Gervonta Davis. As far as Isaac Cruz, he was just a last-minute, stand-in opponent, nondescript guy most people aren't familiar with, so there's no burden, no pressure on him to perform. But now that people have seen what he can do against Gervonta Davis, they're going to start asking themselves, well, what can he do with other guys? Can he continue to be the same guy he was with Gervonta against other fighters, against other guys? What happens next for Isaac is critical.
The best guy that he ever fought was Gervonta Davis.
Gervonta Davis so far, because of that, I don't know what to make of him. Since Gervonta Davis, he's not fighting all the good fighters. The good fighters at 135 pounds. The good fighters at 140 pounds. It's hard to use Gervonta Davis as a gauge for Isaac Cruz's abilities because I don't know what Gervonta's abilities are.
He's only had 2 fights at lightweight.
And this was one of them. The other was the fight with Yuriorkis Gamboa. A one-legged, over-the-hill, injured Yuriorkis Gamboa. It took Gervonta Davis 12 rounds to dispatch. Gervonta Davis has only had 2 fights in the lightweight division. Only 1 fight at 140 pounds, the super lightweight division. So if this guy pushes you to your limits, if this guy makes you look less than perfect,
Is it because he's that good, or is it because you're that bad?
is it because you're not what they say you are, and you're not what they make you out to be? Really don't know and won't know until Isaac gets out there and fights other guys. Other guys that perhaps Gervonta Davis hasn't fought. That will be the gauge. That will be the measure for how good Isaac really is. And I don't know what Isaac's arrangement.
I really hope this guy doesn't end up on the shelf for a year.
PBC really don't keep their fighters all that busy. I mean, look at Gary Russell. Gervonta Davis himself post-fight said that a star was born. A star was born that night in Isaac Cruz. And I actually think he might be right. That could be true. If you get this guy out there, given the fan-friendly style that he's got, and you get him out there often, you might have a bona fide star.
He's got the inside track with the Mexican fans.
The Mexican fans that have carried Canelo Alvarez to new and interesting heights, made him the face of boxing in this country. Those fans. The same could happen for a guy like Isaac Cruz on a smaller scale, but you need to get him out there for that to happen.
The fighter's got to fight.
What's most beneficial for a guy like Isaac Cruz on the heels of a performance like this is to get out there early next year and, keep busy, fight, get back in the winner's bracket, and fight 2 more times in the year of 2022, barring any unforeseen circumstances, injuries, what have you. The more you get this guy out there, the more you build his profile. But if you shelf him for a year on the heels of this performance, then this performance won't matter.
And it'll be a missed opportunity for him.
A missed opportunity for his handlers, because he could very well be a star.
I'm looking for you. I'm looking for you, Errol. Where you at? I'm in the ocean. You say you the big fish. I'm looking for you. Where your ass at? Oh, whole ass. Well, you got a lot of room to hide in this motherfucker. I don't know if I can find you in the ocean. Shit, this the ocean big in the motherfucker, man. We ain't gonna be able to find your punk ass out here. Got a lot of places to hide. Shit, man, we still ain't.
That is reigning WBO welterweight champion Terence Crawford, who is in search of the big fish in the small pond, the PBC pond. The big fish that goes by the name of Errol Spence Jr., unified welterweight champion, that has not seen any action in the entirety 2021 as a result of a detached retina, an eye injury he suffered en route to what was supposed to be a Manny Pacquiao fight. Manny Pacquiao, who has since retired and gone all into the world of politics. The feeling is that if Errol Spence Jr. was all set to unify
With Yordenis Ugas.
earlier this year, before it even became about Manny Pacquiao, and the story became that, even though he suffered that detached retina and he didn't get the fight this year, he was all set to unify with that same
Yordenis Ugas.
Yordenis Ugas.
Next year.
When you look at this timeline and you look at the entirety of this situation, that basically means that after Errol Spence Jr. beat Danny Garcia late last year, he had no intentions of unifying with Terence Crawford the following year, this year. And, what we see is that in spite of the Pacquiao fight falling apart, the detached retina, he does still plan on having a unification match, per some comments made by Yordenis Ugas that there's a contract, or was a contract, for them to fight early next year in February or March.
Also, he didn't plan on fighting Terence next year either.
Errol Spence Jr. is so shamelessly avoiding this fight, putting obstacles in front of it that don't need to be there, because people aren't clamoring for an Ugas fight, most of them. Most of them that are still interested in his career. What remains of it?
They want Bud.
They want to see a Crawford fight. They want to see that fight sooner than later.
Especially now that Ugas is under orders to fight Stanionis.
Terence Crawford himself, he took to social media and said, "I feel like I used to when I was younger on that dumb shit. I can't sleep till I touch something. I'm ready to fight again, and everyone knows who's on that hit list."
Yeah, Brokeback Errol.
Errol, who didn't seem to have any plans of fighting Terence Crawford earlier this year or early next year, not based on reports. He is so shamelessly avoiding this fight. His fans, his supporters,
Oh, they're trying to run interference for him.
alongside his strength and conditioning coach, Blue Ray Fitness, who's been running interference for Errol ever since Terence Crawford showed him up by knocking out Sean Porter. Take a visit over to Blue Ray Fitness's Instagram page. You'll notice
Concentrated effort.
an effort to slander Terence Crawford, an effort to explain away his knockout victory over Sean Porter. Sean Porter, who Errol vowed to knock out, but failed to knock out, failed to deliver, where Terence Crawford...
Well, he knocked him out. He delivered.
Ahead of that Errol Spence versus Sean Porter fight, I told you guys that this guy couldn't drop a stop a blown-up lightweight, so I don't give him any odds to stop Sean Porter. That was ahead of Errol Spence versus Sean Porter. Ahead of Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter was a different story. I told you guys, and I've been telling you guys for well over a year, Terence Crawford would be the first man to stop Sean Porter. That's what happened.
And Errol Spence Jr.'s fans have been having a very hard time dealing with that.
Errol Spence Jr.'s strength and conditioning coach among them, Blue Ray Fitness, who's asking very silly questions, trying to give his revisionist version of the past. Why didn't Terence Crawford go the IBF route instead of the WBO route? Well, maybe it's because Errol told him to go the WBO route. Maybe it's because 4 years ago, Errol Spence Jr. said, get Jeff Horn's belt and will do the fight.
It was strap season, remember?
Seems to me that wasn't much substance to that hashtag strap season. Bubblegum boxer Errol Spence Jr. isn't a man of his word because he told Terrence to do that 4 years ago. Terrence did it. He did it easy. And now...
Well, his acolytes are trying to rewrite history for him.
The ones who, after that fight he had with Sean Porter, these were the guys that were clamoring for a Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter fight. These were the guys who said that before Terrence squares off with Errol, he should have to fight Sean Porter first. He fights Sean Porter. I don't want to give him any credit.
Fucking knock Sean Porter out.
I should say he forced a corner stoppage since these guys want to split hairs over knockouts and technical knockouts. You know, the way these acolytes, the way these butt boys often do.
Hey, whatever it was, Errol couldn't do it.
Knockout, technical difficulties, what have you. Errol Spence didn't make Kenny Porter throw the towel, but Terrence Crawford did, and those are the facts. And the same way that these guys were begging for Terrence Crawford to fight Sean Porter first, only so that afterwards they wouldn't give him any credit, the same will be true if he fights Errol Spence. They'll say whatever they've got to say. They'll say almost anything because they haven't fought yet. But after the fight, they won't give him any credit.
Well, we'll start hearing about the eye in the car accident.
Start hearing about that from the same guys that here and now are saying Errol would stop Terrence Crawford when he couldn't stop Mikey Garcia, couldn't stop Danny Garcia, or Sean Porter. It's been years since Errol Spence Jr., man down, got a man down.
Just silly at this point.
There are no hindrances. There are no obstacles. Terrence Crawford isn't with Top Rank anymore. He's a network and promotional free agent. Errol Spence Jr. instructed him to come over to his side of things, come over to his side of the street. So where are the offers? Where's the effort to get the fight done now that Top Rank isn't in the picture?
You missed the A side, right? So make him an offer. A real offer.